Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by special guest, Travis Talbot. Travis is a hospitality renegade, a goodwill rock star, and he has over 500 plus concepts and projects to his name. He is definitely a proven innovator with global expertise. He's on today straight from Nicaragua. So we're going to be talking to him about everything that he's doing. He's just living the life, living the dream. Travis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Curtis, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you affording me the time.
Well, why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
What? Geez, where do I start? So, like you were saying, I'm a bit of a maverick, a bit of a loose cannon, as my mom would say. But my whole life is really centered only around a few things. One of it's been hospitality, starting in the industry at the age of 9. Working for my mom in her restaurant. I think nowadays they call it child labor. Back then they called it experience. And spent a whole lifetime just kind of developing my skills in the hospitality space. I've worked in every sector of the industry. I think I've worked in every position you can think of. Obviously washing dishes to working in the kitchen, front of house, and then progressing into management, operations. And then kind of spreading my wings and floating around between different sectors, from cruise ships to hotels to catering to, mom and pop operations in restaurant industry, to eventually, working in corporate world for a fair bit, working in the casino world, and then eventually going out on my own and opening up a small little consulting agency with the niche in resorts and kind of entertainment, kind of lifestyle spaces. And that's kind of what's brought me to where I am now. So lots of stories and lots of different layers to that trajectory. But since 2018, when I decided to, my brother and I decided to do this hospitality consulting and coaching agency, I've been full-time nomad. So since 2018, I've been traveling the globe, kind of just soaking in life, soaking in different cultures, obviously gaining exposure to a whole crazy spectrum of different types of F&B operations and hotels and resorts and hostels, you name it. So in the last couple of years, just to name a few, I lived in Bermuda for a while. I was in the Dominican Republic, spent some time in Jamaica. I spent a year traveling in Mexico looking for the world's best taco. And I'm currently in Nicaragua and just helping a friend here with a small F&B project, and once again, just immersing myself into the local culture. So there's kind of everything in a nutshell from where I started to, I think the only thing I missed in there is I took 2 years off from my hospitality career. And one part of our family, or one side of our family, are farmers, ranchers, and cowboys. So I spent a couple of years there where I decided I was going to be a bull rider and a rodeo clown. That didn't pan out so well for me, so I came back to hospitality. But it's pretty much been hospitality all the way through. And one of the things that I say, or that I define as hospitality, is goodwill and giving and making a difference. So to me, that's part of it as well. So that brings you to where I am now, sitting in Nicaragua and chatting with you.
Absolutely. And you have over 500 concepts and projects to your name. Tell us about maybe your most well-known projects, or at least your favorite concepts or projects that you created and worked on.
Well, I've been very fortunate. So I've worked with some of the best in the industry. And when I say best, I mean from the owner-operator side to with, guys that had, when I was 26, I was overseeing 27 venues that included everything from Irish pubs to, casual, premium casual restaurants to, some of the best nightclubs on the west coast of Canada. And then I also had the opportunity to, through all those various projects, work with organizations that's like House of Blues before it came Live Nation, working with Live Nation. And one of my favorite projects there was bringing back to life a venue. It's called the Commodore in Vancouver. that was famous during the 30s to the 50s and 60s. Went quiet for quite a while, and we were part of a resuscitation project. And it was a historical building. It was a landmark venue. It had such rich history to it. And I was able to be a participant in bringing that back to life. And it's still running these days. And, there used to be a claim to fame there that if you named a band anywhere from the 60s up into the 2000s, that was a big deal now, or became a big deal, they got their start at the Commodore. And so that was a great experience and one of the ones I was proud of. But I'd have to say, once again, I've had some amazing opportunities, worked with some amazing people on collaborations. And so you throw a dart at a city anywhere in North America, from Boston to Vancouver, I've got a project probably that I've been a participant in that has done extremely well, or is still up and running, or was the winner of a bunch of accolades. And, and I also went solo for a while. So I owned a few nightclubs. I owned a champagne and wine bar in Vancouver, what we called a Las Vegas rock and roll nightclub in Calgary. Once again, to some really great successes, some really great reviews, lots of media attention and so forth, but just successful venues. And then I'd say most recently, there was two projects in Boston that I'm proud to have been associated with. One was the Bostonia Public House, who are still around and they're still winning awards, and worked for a guy there that was really intent on just retaining some of the heritage of old Boston. So it was a passion project. And then another project we did in Boston was called Coppersmith. And it was beast of a project where it was, 25 to 30,000 square feet. We had 2 food trucks inside the restaurant, in addition to our regular kitchen, our prep kitchen, our catering kitchen. It had a fleet of food trucks associated with it. And it also, what made me most proud to be involved in that project was it was intended to be a community hub. So we had probably 15 to 20 different initiatives that were all community driven, meaning that we worked with various charities on a full-time basis. We worked hard on fighting food insecurity. We worked hard with kind of underserved communities. So it was a really good community project, and it was also a huge success. They're tearing it down now to do a massive development, but man, oh man, I was glad to be a part of that. And for the fact that it was incredibly unique, it was truly a neighborhood venue, and then it just did so much for the surrounding community. And that was the model. The model was to give, right?
Well, I know something that you left out. You were a former Miami Herald and Boston Globe journalist. So tell us about that and how you got started in that.
No, sorry. I think that got conveyed incorrectly. So in my bio, when I was living in Boston and I was doing a number of projects there, I was there during the Boston Marathon bombing. And then as a result of that bombing, when the city was all trying to get together and to heal, we got together with some celebrity chefs, and I was able to be a participant on a team that we did an event called Boston Bites Back, working for Ken Oringer and for Ming Tsai. And we ended up bringing 100 of the top restaurants and top chefs in the city together. And we threw dinner for, I believe it was 5,000 people at Fenway. So through that initiative, the Boston Globe did an article on the event. I did a bit of a feature on me, and one of the writers from the Globe ended up doing a few articles about me, and he was a journalist for the Boston Globe and the Miami Herald. So sometimes that gets misinterpreted. I wasn't a journalist. If you read my writing, you would definitely know that.
Okay, well, I guess in your bio, you're doing things so good. I guess it made people think you were a journalist.
Well, you know what? And it's funny you say that though, Curtis, because part of one of my aspirations and why I'm on this traveling journey is I do want to learn. I want to see different parts of the world, especially with COVID, really changing our mindsets and showing us what it's like when we get isolated. But one of my goals in my career trajectory is to be able to do that Anthony Bourdain initiative and is get out and be a food and lifestyle and culture writer. So I am working on that as one of my career goals, but I haven't accomplished it yet, other than some contributing articles to Thrillist and some other smaller publications. So, but I'm going to get there, Curtis. When I get there, I'll share it with you.
Absolutely. Well, one thing you have got to is you've worked a lot alongside some celebrity chefs. So tell us some of the people that you've worked with, some of the best people that you work with, and what it was like to be able to have the privilege to do that.
And you're right. That's a good way of framing it as a privilege. So I consider, there's all kinds of tiers of celebrities. I know that I think in Hollywood they got the A through the D list or whatever, but I've worked with some chefs that you've never heard of that are true celebrities in their communities, true celebrities with among their colleagues in, the small landscape that they're working in. So I've worked with everything. But in terms of profile on TV, brand name chefs that people would recognize or household names is got to do a little bit of stuff with Gordon Ramsay and Whistler just prior to the Olympics because I was living in Vancouver and overseeing a number of restaurants and venues during the Olympics. He was a character, definitely not like you see on TV. He was a gentleman. I was a part of the Jamie Oliver food revolution, so had some exposure and some interactions with him and his organization. And then when you talk about the guys that are on the Food Network, that kind of stuff, is I did have the opportunity to work for Ming Tsai in terms of I was part of a team that helped design and build one of his restaurants in Boston. And then I was fortunate to be asked to be a participant in that Boston Bites Back initiative, which also included Ken Oringer. And both Ken Oringer and Ming Tsai are legends on the East Coast, and both Iron chefs, and both unbelievably hilarious characters. And then I had the opportunity where I'm friends with Tanya Nyack, who is one of the premier designers on Restaurant Impossible and Home and Garden TV, and I was able to join her team and participate in a number of episodes for Restaurant Impossible for Robert Irvine or with Robert Irvine. So there's another, he's world famous and got to do, I think I got a total of 8 projects under my belt working with Restaurant Impossible. But they were all good people. What I thought was great about all of them, and obviously all very distinctive personalities and different characters and so forth, and contributing different things to the industry. But just the fact that all those people that I had the opportunity to cross paths with were willing to train and to mentor and to share insights and to pass on knowledge. And so I didn't expect that. I honestly didn't expect that in working with celebrity chefs, regardless of their level of celebrity, whether it's local or whether it's TV famous or whether it's recognized globally for their skill sets. I'm always amazed to see how many of these celebrity chefs are just so willing to give. So those are a few of my experiences.
Okay, well, you got a lot more goodwill stuff. You're a goodwill rock star, and I know you talked about stuff in Boston, but you've done a lot more. So you kind of want to go into maybe some other stuff that you've done regarding goodwill.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, is we were always brought up by our mom that we were, and you don't hear this term much anymore. The hospitality industry or the food and beverage, industry used to be coined the service industry. And people used to think that service meant the mechanics of service. So table service or how you're delivering a meal or the mechanics of a guest experience. Where we were brought up, my brother and I, where my mom's kind of had a play on words there. And she says, no, you're not in the service industry. You're in the of service industry. So her position and her teachings to us were that you're here to give something. And it's not just a matter of what you put in front of a person to eat or, to drink. It was about what are you giving to change this person's life? How is your hospitality making their life a little better, whether it's only for 45 minutes to 90 minutes kind of thing. It was all about giving, and it was about being in service and catering and tailoring that service to each individual, to each table. And so that's what we were always kind of brought up to believe. And then as a part of that, and as a part of what we were taught was a successful business model in terms of hospitality and food and beverage, was what are you giving to your community? How are you being of service to the people that are supportive of your business? And so as a part of that, it was obviously making yourself available. It was always having an open door, even though that's cliche, but making sure that you were inclusive to everyone in the community and that you were taking your successes and the investment that people were making into you and turning into a circle of reciprocity where it's a win-win-win for, win for the business, win for the customers that come in, and a win for the community. So we were always taught that whenever you have time, whenever you have resources, and whenever you have wins, you immediately need to take those and to reinvest them into community. And that could be anything from hosting a fundraiser for the local softball team. It could be anything to coming out to the local ballpark or the local soccer pitch, and you're doing hot dogs and tacos for free for the event. And then I kind of took that when I was in charge of restaurants, when I was in charge of businesses, when I had influence over outcomes, and I could be creative. Is I made that a core pillar of almost every operation I've ever been a participant in is, hey, we'll definitely improve the business. We'll definitely make this so it's a successful, sustainable venture. But part of what's going to make that happen is one of the pillars of that stool has to be community. So I've worked it into every business plan, every marketing plan, every culture initiative when it comes to, employee culture for everywhere I've ever gone. And I can't tell you how many different events we've done, how many different collaborations we've done before that was even a word or a term over the years throughout all the different F&B venues and hospitality venues I've worked in. And so that's always been just part of the DNA, part of the marketing musts, and part of the business standards. But I did take it to the extreme at one stage. And so after I sold one of my nightclubs, or I should be a little bit more honest, one of the nightclub projects that I was involved in, when it tanked after everything went sideways, is I decided that I was going to make good on that whole do good, feel good, and give back kind of model. And I decided to give everything in the world I own to charities. And I mean everything. At the end of the day, I had nothing left in my house. The day before I went on the road, so to speak, I had nothing left in my house. My last sleep was with my head on a backpack, staring at an empty house. And all I had was my computer, my backpack, and an honest intention. My mom used to call it my Michael Landon Stairway to Heaven kind of initiative, if anybody remembers that show. But so I ended up going on the road, and my goal was, and I was just learning social media at the time, my goal was to just use social media just to make myself available to whoever was out there, whoever I could reach, whoever was in need. And I would come and offer whatever skill sets I could contribute and help with whoever I could. And so originally I was going to go to like the Habitat for Humanity kind of undertaking, where you go and build houses, or you join an organization that's well established and they send you off and you have certain tasks that they've already have scheduled for you. That never actually came to fruition. So when I had my going away party just after the Olympics, and I'd announced to all of my colleagues, I announced to the industry, so to speak, in Vancouver, where I was able to have a pretty good foothold and a pretty good reputation in the city. I'm in a little bit of profile. Is when I announced this to everybody, nobody took me seriously, and everybody kind of laughed and said, "Yeah, we think you do some good things from time to time, and we get that that's your jam, and that's something that you want to make a part of everything you do. But do you know what you're signing on for? And how are you going to live that humble of a lifestyle after you've been living like a rock star and behind the velvet ropes your whole career?" And so it was a bit of a throwdown, and I was a bit hurt, and it was a time of self-reflection. I had to take a little inventory, and I had to challenge myself and say, okay, I'm just going to do it. So I literally had a friend drive me to the Greyhound station, jumped on my computer, and I just sat there on social media for, I don't know, it must have been half a day, just, making posts. And finally somebody reached out and said, hey, we could use your services, or we could use your contributions, or even if it was labor. So that turned into what I thought was going to be 6 months working for a couple of well-known and well-established charities, to almost 5 years of my life living out of a backpack and just wandering to wherever the call came from to give, to contribute. And so I did everything from work on horse rescue farms, no-kill shelters. I worked with at-risk youth in different communities. I worked with senior shut-ins. I worked with different social services arms in different communities. And I zigzagged across North America for 4 years and 8 months. And I think that everything was said and done, we, through all the different initiatives and all the different events and collaborations, I think we raised close to $10 million for various organizations. And sometimes we only raised a couple of thousand. Sometimes we raised tens of thousands. There was no real rhyme or reason or model to it, but it was definitely a lifetime of experiences, a lifetime of feel-good moments. And that's, once again, just kind of reinforced for me that I'm on a mission where hospitality and goodwill, I think, are synonymous. They're in the same breath. I don't think that they're two different entities. So I'm kind of on this mission as I go through, creating new or working with new clients and being a part of new projects. And as we continue to build our coaching and consulting business, at the end of the day, that's all has goodwill inherent in it. And it's the mission, it's the purpose, it's the lifestyle.
Well, tell us about any current or upcoming projects that you're working on. I know you're working on some books, but tell us about some other stuff that you're working on that people need to know about.
Well, in terms of food and beverage, we're doing some pretty cool things, some pretty groundbreaking and world-class stuff. We're able to be a participant in a project in Big Sky, Montana, that's just going to be world-class in terms of its sophistication, its architecture, its sustainability, and an overall guest experience. So that, to me, is one of the ones I'm most excited about. But there's a number of projects we're working on right now with clients that would fit into that food and beverage. But right now, a big part of what I'm enjoying doing is, even like, for instance, in Nicaragua, I'm hoping to help a friend of mine who's from Canada, help him with a little bit of consulting, a little bit of coaching with a few of his F&B projects. But he's doing some amazing things for the community. He's building houses. He's going in and fixing up houses that are in real need of attention for families that just don't have the resources. And he's also working with at-risk youth and working with gangs. And he's got a surf school to kind of keep them engaged. He's got an MMA gym that he's got, and it's pretty much, I don't even know how he's surviving, but it's a model where if you come and join the gym, he doesn't charge you as long as part of your involvement in that gym is that you're doing something for the community. So he's getting a lot of individuals that need an outlet like that. Otherwise, they'd be going down the wrong path. So I'm both hoping to contribute to that conversation and to that undertaking. And of course, I'm learning a new angle from him on, another angle on community, how to give back to community and how to structure it. Because unfortunately, from my travels anyways, or my limited experiences, most people equate goodwill, or they equate giving or charitable work with either work or an investment of their own resources in terms of money. Where I've been learning ever since I went on that road trip, which was called Goodwill Travels at the time, and then it switched over to we called it Project Goodwill. But I've learned through all of those experiences, and then meeting up with like-minded people in my travels, and seeing different communities of all sizes, scope, scale, access to resources, no access to resources. The giving is such a different. It's a different mindset than what most people think it is. It's not just stroking a check. It's about being engaged. It's about being accessible and approachable. It's about being creative, which I also love that side of it. I've seen so many different ways to get creative with how people give back. Like, for instance, Johnny in his surf school. Like, I would have known that just giving disadvantaged kids access to a surfboard and spending time out on the water can be life changing, right? So so those were a few initiatives. And then another one that we're working hard on, my brother and I and our team from our consulting team, is we're about to launch we go talk about chefs that were so willing to give. And I'm like, I think that I've over 500 plus projects, all the travels I've done, a few successes I've been fortunate to have. I think that maybe I'm at a stage now in my life where I might have some insight, or, for lack of a better word, some wisdom, or let's call it knowledge. where I should be able to give back in that regard, or it should be mandatory for me to share those insights and save some people some of the hard knock lessons that I had along the way. So we're about to launch an online coaching platform that is for aspiring F&B and hospitality entrepreneurs. So a lot of these people with great ideas, amazing energy, all the aspiration in the world, sometimes they don't get off the ground or they don't get past the first phase of their project because they just don't know what they don't know. They don't have anyone to go to that can mentor them or that's willing to share advice for free. And they don't know, there's no portal for them because nowadays everything is, from YouTube. There is some good content on YouTube. There are some great materials and some great websites and some great people out there that are sharing content. So I don't want to make a blanket statement, but for the most part, because I research this stuff every day and I was looking for all this kind of stuff as I was coming up in the world, it's really hard to find someone to bounce an idea off, to give you informed and intelligent feedback. So we're going to be, and then also something that's affordable. So a lot of these resources that are out there, sometimes you get the freemium product and then they funnel you and you get through that rabbit hole where it's like, oh, buy course A. Oh, now you bought course A, you can't finish it unless you buy book B. And that book B is no good of you unless you take our webinar C. And it's just becomes this rabbit hole of add on, and cost. And so not only is it frustrating, some people don't have the resources or you've tapped them of the resources that were invaluable to them. So we're going to launch a platform for coaching for aspiring entrepreneurs. And it's just going to be however you want to digest it, however you're able to afford it. So, we'll do one-to-one consultations to find out what the goals are and what people need in terms of support or what they need in terms of mentoring or advice. And then we'll put together a program that's bite-sized. So they can buy it by the minute. They can buy it by the emails. They can buy it by a visit or, a peer review, depending on what stage they are at and whatever scope and scale of their project is. So that to me is we're super excited about that. I'm looking forward to getting on calls and having some email exchanges and essentially some conversations where we can help someone avoid failure or help them. Actually, the better way to put that is help them thrive and, survive and thrive in a very competitive landscape and in a landscape where there's not a lot of people out there that are helping. All right. So we're hoping to launch that next month. And then we've already had a couple of people sign on that we've offered our services to. A couple in Michigan that are opening up a cafe that, it was astounding. They're both successful business people, but it was astounding how much they didn't know about restaurants, even though they're both financially successful and successful in their own realms. So we're working with them on their project. And then we've got a couple of food truck operators that are just literally in their teens and early 20s. So we're helping them put together their business plans. And we have another couple of guys that we're speaking to that have some bigger ideas that we're having to do some homework and we're having to expand our knowledge, where they're looking at doing some online, food delivery products, or they're looking to put their products online so that it's like a retail online store, but food and beverage based. So not only is it already becoming fruitful for us in terms of being able to give back and contribute, but it's also we're learning in the process, and sometimes we're learning as much as we're giving. So, but that's definitely the one project right now that I'm excited about, because being online, it's a global reach. We are globally accessible, and I'm excited to see all these new ideas that are out there in the industry and being able to coach someone to success, right? And share their knowledge. So yeah, hopefully that's ready next month.
Right. Well, so people can keep up with everything you're up to, contact you if they need to use your service. Throw out your website, social media links. How can people get in touch with you and your company?
A number of ways. And we have a few little agencies. So we have probably the ones that are best for, so I'm on LinkedIn, which I'm usually on every day because that's pretty good for networking for us. And that's also a great platform where we learn from and we source information. And I'm on LinkedIn under Travis Talbot. I'm on most social media links, pretty much every platform, although I'm not as active on TikTok as I should be, but I'm studying it, I'm learning it. But I'm under most social media platforms at T-Bone Talbot. which is my nickname since I was a kid. And then our website right now that we're doing most of our current work under with hospitality organizations, F&B organizations, where we have a bit of a focus on resort development and so forth, is called hospitalityarts.group. And then if anybody just wants to email me direct, if they feel that's the most comfortable way to go, it's travis@hospitalityarts.group.
Hospitalityarts.group.
Yeah.
Close us out with some final thoughts, maybe something that I failed to talk about that you would like to touch on because you got such an extensive bio, or just any final thoughts you got for the listeners.
Well, I think we've talked about basically two categories, so hospitality and goodwill. So I would say if I was to give anyone any advice or a parting kind of food for thought on hospitality, it would be please put together a plan. It was sad to see during COVID how many really good operators, how many really sincere people that had great offerings and thriving businesses didn't survive that storm because they just didn't have a plan to refer to, or a plan to be able to be revisited and to be tweaked and to say, oh, okay, here's what our marketing initiatives were before, our strategies were. How do we rewrite these pages so that we're able to be agile during these times? So that would be my number one thing for anyone in the hospitality industry is please have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, reach out. I always say to all of my clients and to anyone I work with or anyone in my travels, listen, in my laptop, I've got 35 plus years of experience stored. Like I'm a hoarder when it comes into information. So you got a coffee shop, I got a business plan. You've got a high-end seafood and steakhouse, I've got a business plan. You need marketing strategies, I've got 50 of them in my computer. And I always say, whatever's mine's yours, because I didn't create it. I just got exposed to it. I acquired it, or I helped be a collaborator in drafting it. So I don't really like to think that I own it. It's materials. It's kind of like my brother likes to say is there's no such thing as someone owning an umbrella. Every time you walk into a restaurant, you either leave one behind and forget about it, or you acquire one. But then you always either leave that behind somewhere. So I like to look at my cachet of resources as being that kind of umbrella. So if you need something like that, reach out. Happy to share it. There's no cost to me to share. And on the goodwill side, I would like to hope that now in the days we're in and all the political dynamics that are happening and, post-COVID era and just the chaos that we're exposed to every day and how much of a struggle life is for the majority of people, that there is what I call ROI and ROE. So return on investment. An investment can mean so many different things, and return on effort in being kind and in contributing. So once again, I don't like to use the word giving because sometimes that always gets reduced to handing out cash, or at least people think so, and that's their first response. But I think that there's so much good in giving, and I mean that in terms of how it enriches you as an individual. You could talk about karma, but just the residuals that come back to you in doing things for others. And like I said, it's part of my brother and I's DNA. It's part of our business model and everything that we believe in. But we've also seen the positive outcomes that come out of it. So I would say that if people are feeling down, if people are struggling, it's ironic to say, but sometimes the best way to come out of that tailspin is to be giving and to contribute something wherever you can and however small it is.
Absolutely. Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, check out everything that T-Bone is up to, and you can check out his websites and all of his information. And if you got people out there wanting to start a restaurant, I know I have a lot of vending friends, and I'm even going to be getting into the vending world. So please follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. T-Bone Talbot.
When you are established with your vending world, which is coming back in a big way, let me know, because it is one of the things that we recommend to so many of our hotel clients, our resort clients, and especially with the labor shortage out there, or the perceived labor shortage, and the new model. This is the new model of the new era that's being created out there. Is we recommend vending to all sorts of our clients. So I would love to learn more about your business.
Absolutely. And once it gets kicked off, I will keep your information and definitely get in touch with you because you're a guru. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Curtis, I appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.